Good afternoon and welcome to Smart Music's webinar from Surviving to Thriving, Teaching During a Pandemic. My name is Michaela Graham, Senior Event Specialist for Make Music, and I'll be running everything in the background for our session today. Before we get started, I would like to give you all just a couple of housekeeping notes. If you have any questions for our presenter throughout the session, please feel free to drop it in the Q&A box. We will have a specific time for Q&A at the end of the session with our presenter, but please be sure to drop questions specifically into that Q&A box. We will not be addressing any questions that are put in the regular chat box, and this will just help us keep track of everything a little bit more easily. At the very end of the session today, we will share a link to the certificate of attendance for the webinar, as well as a PDF of the slides shown today. Please note the certificate of attendance will only be available for live attendees and not for the replay. Without further ado, I would like to introduce the presenter for our session today. Becky Bush has a wonderfully impressive resume as both a musician and educator. She is currently orchestra director at Jenison Public Schools in Jenison, Michigan, was string acquisition editor and Suzuki strategist at Alfred Music Publishing, the adjunct professor of music education at Grand Valley State University and Calvin College, the St. Cecilia Music Center Youth Orchestra director and founder of the Hudsonville Public Schools Orchestra program. She co-authored Sound Differentiation for Beginning String Orchestra, which was recently published by Alfred Music. She's a graduate of the University of Michigan and Grand Valley State University. She has been music director at the Michigan ASTA String Camps, Blue Lake Fine Arts Camps, and Phillips Family Fiddle Camps. She has presented multiple sessions at the Midwest Clinic, the National ASTA Conference, Ontario Music Educators Association Conference, the Texas MEA Conference, the yearly NISMA Conference, and more, and has been an active guest conductor throughout Michigan. We're so glad you're able to be with us today, Becky. I'm going to hand the presentation off to you. So if you want to turn your video on, there you are. Let's
Great.
get started.
Hi, everybody. It's so great to be here, and I think you all deserve like an A+ just for showing up on a Friday. So I'm super impressed that you're here. I am just so excited about today because I am right there, like Michaela said, teaching in the trenches with you guys right now, and I think we could all use a little encouragement. So well, first of all, I did want to say I teach orchestra and I teach fifth graders, beginners, all the way through high school. So I kind of do a little bit at each level. And this webinar today will be really geared for any music teacher, whether it's elementary, general music, band, choir, orchestra. So this applies really to all of us. Our agenda for the afternoon is we're going to focus on first kind of talking about surviving and what that's looked like, and how we can kind of process that, and then move into a lot of tips and information on how we can really be thriving in our new situations. I do want to preface it. There's no magic pills, right? We are still in a pandemic. We're teaching during a pandemic, but hopefully you'll really walk away today with some tips and just different ways of thinking that can kind of set you up for as much success as possible and a little more sanity. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. And we'll pop that up there and get this presenting. There we go. So I do teach in Jenison Public Schools in Michigan, and we have kind of every scenario around us. Right now I'm currently teaching in person and with the students zooming in, so kind of a hybrid. But we have every variation going on in Michigan. And everything we're going to talk about today really, again, applies to all of us. You can apply it to whatever teaching situation you're in. So surviving. Throw in the chat right now. How many of you feel like you are just in survival mode? Can I get a yes in the chat from you? I'm guessing it's all of us. I see a one popping in there. Yes, throw in a yes if you feel like you are surviving right now. Mentally, physically, emotionally exhausted is kind of where we're at. So we We've all been there, and I just thought this was perfect. My 5 year plan this year is to make it through this year. So hopefully that is your plan as well. We can't get too carried away in our 5 year plans like we typically would as music educators. And I'm sure a lot of you have felt this, right? I just want to say right now, this session is really to normalize how you're feeling. Everybody's in the same boat. Nobody feels like they know what they're doing as teachers, and that's okay. And that's part of the survival that we've in. We've all had ups and downs of survival. And like I said, I'm right there. The other day, I was super frustrated with something and was venting to my colleague, and I had to touch base with him later and be like, you know what, I am really sorry. I was tired and I shouldn't have been venting. So we've all been there. And we are going to just say to every one of you right now, you are doing great. Wherever you're at, we're all barely keeping our heads above water, and that is okay. I have yet to talk to one teacher who has it all together right now. So if you are in that boat, like the rest of us, hang in there. It's normal. It's okay. This quote at the bottom of the screen that you can see was passed down from some administrators in our county and to the teachers as well. You just successfully opened school during a global pandemic, under a state of emergency, with a full moon, during a time of significant social unrest, and with multiple learning platforms. Extremely well done. So I think it's really important that we give ourselves permission to be surviving. It's okay. It's what we really are in a tough time right now. Kind of, I hate to overuse the word, but unprecedented time, and that is going to have really big implications for all of us. We had a lot of interest in this webinar, so it's a hot topic for everybody. So something I want you to think about in surviving is really taking a look around. And some of you are in person, some of you are all online, but whatever your situation is, everybody around you is dealing with incredible challenges. Everybody from bus drivers to administrative assistants, parapros, administrators, students, and families. And we know that, but I've seen a lot of teachers kind of get frustrated with our situations, and administrators are making us do this, and this is going on, and they didn't think about this, and it's really important when we're in survival mode to take a step back and remember everybody is in this boat, not just the teachers. And that will really give us a different perspective as we're reacting to the things that are coming down. A lot of us are in teaching situations where there's been changes every single week. We're going to do this now. We're going to try it this way because we had a plan and it didn't quite work. And we're adapting fast, but so is everybody else. So I can tell you when I was in one of my offices the week before school started, and you could just see it on the administrators' faces, right? We're just trying to get school open. One administrator was running with the computer to the other office, and just the speed at which they were making decisions was incredible. So just really keeping that in mind as we're reacting to things that are coming down the pike for teachers. Everybody is making a lot of decisions, and teachers are too, right? We are, but so is everybody in our district, in our county, and at the state level, in the government. And that can really help our frustration level if we can take a step back and kind of acknowledge our mindset with that. And instead of expecting everything to be going perfectly, we're in a pandemic, it's not going to, and that's okay. A big part of just kind of dealing with the period we're teaching in right now is in surviving is acknowledging our situation, and we can quickly say, oh yes, I have a new assignment, but I should be able to handle this, and we really need to step back and to kind of acknowledge what we're at, whether it's a job loss, whether it's a completely different assignment. Some of us maybe have been moved to not teaching music at all, teaching a completely new subject. We might be moved to teaching on a cart. Sorry, the poll you can go ahead and fill out that poll that just popped up. we might be hybrid, we might be online completely, we might be in person, and it might have changed. I know in Michigan, a lot of schools just went from remote to in person, and it's a whole new set of parameters to adapt to. Um, and this is going to be continual, right? Our bands are in our county. We're not allowed to be playing wind instruments inside, so our bands are outside under a tent. And things were going along, starting to work, and then one day there was a big wind and the tents all fell down, and it's just one thing after another. So kind of acknowledging that what we're doing is tough, and that's okay, giving ourselves permission. Oh, whoops, sorry, let me get back. There we go. I was trying to move the poll and clicked on my screen. So just like you, when you're teaching remote, we have glitches, right? And that's okay. um, so so being honest with ourselves and not diminishing our emotions. It's okay. You talk to any counselor or social worker, we have to acknowledge how we're feeling about it. If we shove it down and just try to push through, it's going to come out, right? That emotion will explode in a way that we don't want it to. So really giving ourselves space to have the reactions and feelings about these changes is really important. We can't rationalize it away. We got to kind of feel it. And all of these situations are tough. If you're teaching online, it's an incredible amount of energy to engage students online. If you're in person, there's a lot of protocols, and everything we do, every procedure is changed and different, and it's just so much brain space to keep all that. I was talking to my colleague earlier this week, and she was telling me some stuff, and I just stopped. I was like, can you just repeat all that? I didn't hear any of that. It's so much brain power just to register all the changes. And then hybrid, of course, is the space to do both. I think as we move forward through this webinar, moving from surviving to thriving is remembering that it's not linear. We're going to have times when we feel like we're surviving, and we're going to have times when we feel like we're thriving. And it's not always a linear progression. It's okay to be going back and forth a bit. I love this quote by John Gordon. If you don't follow John Gordon on social media, you totally should. He's got a lot of great books, and it's just a really strong presence for educators. His quote is, "Being positive doesn't mean you ignore the reality of your situation or sugarcoat what's happening. It means that you don't let negativity sour things and make them worse." So it really is okay and crucial that we acknowledge our situation and our emotions about them. We don't necessarily stay in one spot in our reaction, but we have to acknowledge it and feel that. Oops. Oh my gosh, I did it again. Sorry. Okay, so the other thing is not comparing ourselves to other teachers. How many of you have been online researching on the Bitmoji craze Facebook page or something, and we just think, oh my gosh, all these other teachers have this all figured out, and I haven't even started this or that or whatever platform it is that you're switching to. It's really important to remember not to compare ourselves to others. We're all in different situations, and we're all going to have very different teaching situations, just like we did before the pandemic. So all we can do is the best we can do, and we're going to talk more about how to do that. But it's really okay to be comfortable with where we're at and honest where we're at and not comparing ourselves. All right. This is probably one of the most important slides of this presentation, and it's really about processing grief, change, and loss. And I do want to say, I am not a professional psychologist or counselor, so I highly recommend if you're struggling, that is really important to seek out somebody who is trained in how to do that. And this has all been floated by a few different people around in my circle that are social workers, psychologists, just to make sure you're getting good information. But processing grief is really important, and this goes along the lines of really allowing ourselves to feel the emotion of what we're going through. Grief will hit us at very different times. I am blessed to work in an amazing district with a music department of 14 people, each of whom I deeply respect as music educators and as people. And I'm going to tell you, every single one of us has processed the grief of our programs changing and the pandemic in very different ways and in very different timelines, and that's okay. Everyone will react to the pandemic differently, and that's okay. There we go. Um, Taking time to grieve losses, and that can look a lot of different ways. Some of us teaching have had families that have lost family members from COVID, a lot of different losses, or in our own lives, loss of jobs, loss of time with loved ones because of protocols and restrictions, loss of really milestone events for our family or friends, or at school. And taking time to grieve those is not only appropriate but essential to move into thriving. Really recognizing denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance, kind of being able to recognize where we're at. Those are not stages that, again, that we progress through literally as we process grief. Those are things we're going to experience at all different times. So, but being able to recognize it in ourselves and in other people, i.e., our colleagues, is really, really helpful for how we're going to move through this. And then just really giving space to our colleagues, to ourselves, to our parents and our students is going to be really important and help our perspective as we navigate this. It's really easy to be teaching online and get so frustrated with kids that aren't engaging, or different aspects of teaching online, and really, we need to follow up and do a lot of things to help with that, but also realizing that every family is experiencing a lot during this pandemic. I was talking to a social worker friend of mine, and she said every patient I see right now is impacted by COVID in some way, and it's significant. And it's easy, once we get up and rolling in our platforms or in face-to-face teaching, it's easy to kind of lose perspective of that is still a huge impact for us and for the people we work with, and students and families. Um, Taking time to really encourage yourself, but also, and congratulations, you're here, you're already doing that, yay. But encouraging others around you and giving patience to others. I have found when I'm purposely looking outward at other people and trying to be encouraging and think, hey, what do they need right now? I am actually doing a lot better myself. If I'm focused on, this is so hard for me, I can't keep up, and all this, it's we kind of get in that world, and when we're focused outward, it really changes our perspective. Our junior high office is like most junior high offices, just very, very busy, and there's always students coming in and out, and our secretaries are amazing, but it's crazy. So when I was walking by the office the other day, no, there were no students in there. So I opened the door and I said, hey, you guys look bored. I should come in and ask a question. And they just laughed. But focusing on what are other people's experiences like, and how can I just give them a little laugh right now, or a little perspective. One other thing I want you to consider on processing the grief and change and loss is that August, September, even like back in July, June, might have been all survival for you. And the reality and grieving might just be setting in now, and that's okay. So we're kind of, a lot of teaching situations are moving, we're up and rolling, we're started, and then we kind of let that reality set in that, wow, my program is not what I want it to be right now. I'm not able to do the things I've always been able to do to build the program. So just kind of acknowledging and giving ourselves space to process now is really important, and throughout the year as things change. So two people, resources, all of these links, a bunch of the slides have links, and like Michaela said, she's going to pass that out to everybody at the end, and the links are in there, so you can just click on the links and get all the information. Brene Brown is another great person to follow. She's a psychologist and an expert in the field, but is really great at kind of talking to the masses, and she's on social media and has some wonderful books, so she's a great person to follow and check out. And then kind of the resident expert is on death and dying, but really any grieving, so that included that as well. All right, so the summary is give yourself space, time, and permission. It is really okay. And then remembering our why. So as we move to thriving, this is some text. I'm actually going to break like every rule for PowerPoints from here on out, and I have a lot of text for you, and that's because I did include a lot of resources, and I really wanted you to be able to access those. So this is part of a blog post that I wrote earlier on, and that's kind of where this webinar came from, or a couple blog posts that I wrote about thriving. But really stop, breathe, and remember your why. So I'm just going to read this to you, and you can kind of soak it in. Stop and remember why you went into teaching. The why. The why is our good news and our driving purpose. It is our framework and saving grace during this unprecedented time. It really always has been. We are teachers to love and care for our students, and we have the privilege of opening the world of music to them. And guess what? I know that every one of you already knows how to do that, and you can do it no matter what teaching circumstance you find yourself in. So it really has always, keeping the why in perspective really has always been our framework that we work from. Because as music teachers, we are always thrown changes every year. There's always a schedule change. We're kind of always putting out fires and fighting the good fight for our program and all that stuff. So as we do that in the past and now, it's really our driving purpose is really remember why are we doing this? Why are we teaching? Why do we love to teach? And we're going to talk about some tips to try to capitalize on that in this new situation, teaching during a pandemic. Basic good psychology, and again, I was talking to a different psychologist friend of mine, and she said pretty much all I have well, first of all, this field of social work, psychology, all that is maxed out right now. Everybody is seeking out help, and for good reasons. So I encourage you to do that. Seek out professional counseling. But my friend was saying, I've seen so many teachers and really talking them through what can we control and focusing on that, because there's so much right now that we cannot control and that we don't have a voice in, and it's happening so fast. It's really impossible to have a voice in. So there's a lot of really great circles. You've probably seen photos passed around on Facebook or things like that, but there's a lot of circle diagrams, circle of control, kind of what is inside the circle are things you can control, and outside of the circle are things that are out of our control. But here's a few ideas just to get you thinking that way. My actions, words, and decisions, I can control those. I can control my actions and the words I use with my colleagues, students, my family, all of that, my decisions. I can control how I treat others, my kindness, my grace, my judgment. That's a big one that can kind of wear us down. If I'm spending time judging others, it's not really helping me thrive most of the time. So how can I take care of myself? And I can control whether or not I ask for help. Okay? We are teachers. We love to be self-reliant and do all this, but really asking for help when we need it is really important. Whether it's online, and we'll talk a little bit more about social media and resources there. A lot of teachers have been great at asking questions on social media, and that's fantastic. I can control the amount of time, energy, and effort I put in, and this is really important, especially for the long haul. And we'll talk a little about this a little bit more at the end, but it has taken an incredible amount of time, energy, research, and effort to get our new teaching situations, whatever they look like, started and up and rolling. And it might not be able to be sustainable. So we have to set boundaries in what we're able to do. The link there is the Boundaries book. It's called Boundaries, and it's fantastic for really all areas of life. Really easy read. A great way to help you determine how to set boundaries in your life. I can control my social media and news intake, and that's really important given all the social issues that are happening right now. I can sense it. I have teenagers in my house, so I'm always talking to them about trash in, trash out, and monitoring our social media and news intake. And then I find myself doing the same thing, like, oh, I was online too much, and I can see it impacting myself. So really taking some important breaks and finding a structure in your life that works for that. I can choose whether I follow the rules or not. I can't control if everybody else follows the rules, and this is really important for face-to-face teaching with protocols and all that. And I can encourage, I can do all that, but basically I can control my choices, and I can't control everyone else, and that's okay. I can control how I handle my feelings, my gratitude, and how I react to situations. So hopefully that gives you a few things. I mean, I've read that list many different times over the past 6 months, and every time I'm like, oh yeah, that's a really good reminder. I was starting to wanting to control this part, and it's out of my control. It's also helpful with, again, those admin decisions that we don't always understand, and we can push, we can advocate, we can do all those things. But at the end of the day, whatever our teaching situation is, that's where we are, and we can choose how we react to that. Once again, I just want to circle back to the allowing yourself to feel. It doesn't change. You might feel a certain way about any of the things you can't control, and dealing with that and acknowledging that is really important. But as we kind of move in a circular way through that, focusing on what I can control is important. I love this quote. I heard this many years ago, but pain that is not transformed is transmitted, and I think that is so important, because if I'm feeling a lot of anger or hurt as a teacher or anything like that, that's going to come out to people around me. So the more I can work through that and transform that in my own life, that will help everybody else around me and my teaching situation. So, all right. Just a few more questions related to focusing on what you can control. What can I do in my situation and feel good about? So if I'm in a completely different teaching situation that is foreign to me, what can I do that is successful and that I will feel good about, instead of all the things I can't do? I can't have my kids play together because we're online. I can't do this. I can't do that. That will keep us in a survival mode and not enjoying our jobs at all for a long time. So focusing on what can I do? Okay, I can't do this, but you know what? I could do this. um, I still get to work with my kids, and they still need an education. If there's ever a time that we needed educators that are fired up, ready to teach and connect with kids, it is now. They are desperate and hungry for attention, for activity, mental activity, and for, obviously, in our boat, for making music. They are on their screens a lot. A lot of them were on way too much during quarantine, and making music is as important as ever. This is where I'm needed right now, especially if you're in a different teaching situation, if you're teaching in a classroom setting rather than a music class or anything. You know what? Our district, our kids, everybody is in a different situation, and this is where I'm needed. So I'm going to make the best difference I can right now. I have a friend that is a phenomenal general music teacher, and got moved to a classroom, a fifth grade classroom, and I encouraged him, but also I said, "Oh my gosh, those fifth graders are the luckiest fifth graders on the planet, because they get to have you all day." So really, again, it's about a perspective, and remembering that it isn't just teachers that are being affected by the pandemic. Okay, let's be honest. Teachers can get into martyr syndrome really quickly. So it's important to remember that, and there are, obviously, we need to stick up for ourselves and all that, but it's also important to remember that every field has been impacted. I mean, I have yet to talk to any friends or family in any field that have not been impacted by the pandemic in some way, and a lot of jobs are changed, are lost, are very stressful, with new protocols. So the first blog post that I referenced earlier is actually linked right here, so if you're looking for that, you can check it out. All right, I went to the ASTA webinar by Sarah Blackball and Jim Palmer a week or two ago, and it was fantastic. Jim Palmer showed how he teaches on Zoom, and he has it down to a science. So it was fantastic. If you're looking for something, it's on the ASTA webpage. But Sarah Ball said this, and I just thought the way she said it was so effective. Let go of how it used to be. Let go of how this will impact the future, and be fully present with our students right now, one day at a time. And I just love how she said that. And I messaged her. I was like, can I share this in my webinar? Because I love it. It just sums it up right there. All right, can we be fully present with our students right now? My brain, if I'm honest, has gone so many times to, what is our program going to look like 4 years from now? We haven't started beginners yet. Oh my gosh, But what is it? What can I be? How can I be fully present right now with my students? And take it one day at a time. We don't know what our holiday concert is going to look like in December. We just found out about our fall concert, and that's in 2 weeks, and now we know what we're doing, and boom, here we go. But one day at a time is really important, and just being fully present. I think it is, just one more comment on the program. It's really important to be proactive and do everything we need to do to ensure the quality of our music programs long term. But once we do all that, again, that's outside of our control. Once we do all the things that we can to be proactive, and at some point we have to let it go and be fully present. So just really, really taking that to heart. It also free up a lot of brain space for you. So allow you to be fully present. I saw this and just loved it. There's so many great statements in here. And I think the most important one is this is only temporary. We don't know what it'll look like after the pandemic, but it's not going to look this way forever. So we can move forward. We don't have to have it all figured out to move forward, right? I'll make mistakes, and that's okay. So if you respond well to affirmations, you can reference that slide for some encouragement. So, all right. So as we had talked about moving to thriving, I think one thing that we can really control this year is connection with our students. And there's lots of different resources out online on how to do that. I included one in here, Virtual Icebreakers, that has a lot of ideas for specifically online teaching, because we all have, I think, a lot of icebreakers for face-to-face. And then focusing on connection with our staff, colleagues, and students, everybody. And that is something, again, thinking about kind of outwardly, how could I bring joy to someone else? How could I encourage someone else? We had a meeting earlier this summer with some of our music staff and administrator, and we were all nervous about how this is going to go. Where are we going to be teaching? How are we going to figure out all these protocols? And the meeting went really well, and just shooting a text to everybody, hey, great job, guys. It's not perfect. We didn't have answers to everything. It's not all perfect, but hey, good meeting. We're on the right track. Just everybody needs to hear that right now. And being a person who is looking to see when other people need encouragement is really important. We have a teacher that in our district started a whole Facebook group just devoted to encouraging each other, because she said this is going to be a hard year for all of us, and we need to encourage each other. No one's allowed to post anything about about the COVID or procedures or anything like that. It's all encouragement. And it's been so wonderful. And it's just one teacher that said, hey, there's a need for this, and I'm going to start it. And she put herself out there and did it, which I love. I have found taking the focus off myself for even 1 minute will help me feel so much better. So it's a great way to move from thriving to surviving. It's not going to be every day all the time. We're all going to be in some survival where we're just trying to make it. But the more we can do that, it will really free up ourselves to be the people we kind of want to be and enjoy what we're doing. Send a positive email. I have found this with especially our administrators right now. Sorry about that. They are in the trenches, and just like we have gotten some we have a lot of experiences with parents right now and people in tough situations, and they're the same way. So our administrators are working so hard, and the negatives often drown out the positives, just like for us as teachers. How many of you have gotten a negative email from a parent, and it just sits there in your brain, and you can't let it go, even though 100 other parents love what you're doing, right? Administrators are the same way, so they need encouragement. Sending a positive, take the 30 seconds to send a positive email about something that they did or anything like that. It will brighten their day. So the next series of questions are really ones that we can kind of continually ask ourselves to reframe where we're at. Moving outside of how does this impact me? There was a really great webinar earlier this summer where they talked about talking to a CEO of a major company, and every time there's changes, what happens? And that's what we're facing in education right now. There's big change. And she said, you know what? Everybody comes back to how does this impact me? And it's natural. It's human psychology and helps us to move forward. But really making ourselves ask some of these harder questions will change our perspective gradually. So we can ask, what's going on here? What is the bigger picture? How is this impacting others? Am I seeing what my custodian is having to go through right now? Could this change bring good for our school, for students, for me? We've started using smart music, and I can't tell you, it's amazing. Especially like we have all of our students that are zooming into our class, and they can practice with it and hear their part. Amazing. I am super excited about it. And that's a huge change that has been really, really good for all of our students and our teaching staff, all our band and orchestra students. How can I think outside of the box? How could I figure out a new solution to this? How can I grow during this? How can I learn from this? So when we're asking those types of questions, it forces us into a different brain space, into something that will be thriving rather than just stuck on surviving. So we had 3 teachers, right? This was the week before. 2 days before school started, and everybody was stressed. We were opening school. We didn't know exactly how many kids were coming. We didn't know exactly how it was going to work. Everything's different. Drop-off procedures, everything. And these 3 teachers were amazing. These are their badges they made. They were in the line to get their staff pictures taken, making up all kinds of fun titles for themselves, and it was contagious to everybody. When I emailed them to ask them if I could share this in the webinar, one teacher said, "Sure, go ahead and share it, but you just got to know I feel like I'm just going to quit today." So we all feel that. We've all felt like there's days right now where we want to quit. But finding the joy whenever we can, the days that we have, it will spread to other people. Being positive doesn't mean walking around with kind of a fake smile like, hey, everything's good, but it does mean trying to find the joy and have fun in the midst of all the hard things that are going on. All right, so moving to the connection with our students, really remembering, I have found this to be really helpful this year, the question marks at the bottom of the screen, not even all the text. The question marks. If I can remind myself to slow down and start with questions, I've been really much more productive with students. Seeking out information before making assumptions or diving into like, oh, we got to get this assignment in because da-da-da. How are you doing? What's going on? If I can start with some of those questions, I'm making it a lot further than if I just jump in to where my teacher brain is. I've got students that are babysitting during the days. I've got students that are working a lot of hours. We've got students in our district picking up shifts. We have a couple nursing homes right near our school and picking up extra shifts because other people are not working at nursing homes anymore. Babysitting. Oh yeah, I mentioned babysitting. Families that people, I've had, families with family members who have passed away from COVID, with sick relatives out of state and they've left the state, and just so many different things. And not to mention everybody's home environment is different right now with parents at home and a lot of job loss, different things like that. So just a reminder, as we're building connections with students, the simplest thing is just to start off with a few questions. It doesn't have to take a lot of time. But just so that's a simple way to show that we care about what they're going through. And then I think our team at our school really talked a lot about really making sure that we're focused on making music. So any way we can, when we were online, getting kids playing, we did a lot of picture of people practicing competitions and just with our beginners and different things like that. Playing on Zooms. I've seen a lot of teachers kind of focusing on theory and history, and in some situations we have to if students don't have instruments and things like that. But how is there any way that I could get my students making music and off their screen in terms of homework, filling in sheets and things like that? Because they're going to do that for every other class. I have 4 kids in my house, and I can tell you that when we were all online, they were on their screens a lot, and I was doing anything I could to get them off. And the assignments where they were off their screens doing something were really beneficial. And our students signed up for band, orchestra, choir. Even they don't sign up, but they're in elementary music to make music. They want to make music. So the more we can focus on that with our teaching, I think the better. One thing I wanted to hit too with our student situations is the whole, if we're teaching virtually, there's the whole debate about cameras on, cameras off, and every district is in a different place with that. But sometimes we have to really change our expectations. And I saw some great tips. I don't even remember who this was from. I'm sorry. But where, have students, if you're allowed to, on say a Zoom, put their picture up, something so you don't feel like you're teaching to an empty class, but kind of changing our expectations of what that might look like depending what our requirements for our district are. And given the parameters that you have, how can you engage students? So could you do breakout rooms if you're allowed to do that? Can you get kids in the chat asking, you put out questions and get them engaged that way? Lots of different tips. And again, I'm not going to go into a lot of specific teaching tips because that's not the purpose of this webinar. But it's more the mindset. How can I change my expectations and given my parameters? All right, next I want to talk about just being flexible and honest. So, teachers, we are not the most flexible people because we like to be in charge and, and set up how everything's going to go. Especially music teachers, right? We're event planners. We do all these things, but really being flexible as we're teaching, especially if you've moved to online teaching. So, if what you're doing is working, keep doing it. Okay. If what you're doing is not working, change it. Just because you said this is how we're going to start the year doesn't mean it has to stay that way. Be really honest with your students. Say, hey, we're all figuring this out, and I think there's some better ways we can move forward. So we're going to try this. One thing the thing that I have found the most helpful is a quick Google survey. Our school uses Google Classroom, so I just have a Google form, and it has given me really good insight into students and kind of where they're at. Sometimes with being flexible, you see the top little Bitmoji. I have a little Bitmoji classroom. I didn't get totally into it, but I did enough to have a little fun. And being flexible is sometimes all we can do is laugh, right? I mean, I can't tell you. I think the first 2 weeks of school, my colleague and I that I work with the most, we laughed so many times because we had some crazy things going on. We had one class that started like 20 minutes late because there were so many issues happening and student things going on with the new protocols and all of this, and we just turned to each other and just bust out laughing. We're like, this is just going to be what it is. We're doing the best we can, and we're going to have fun doing it. So the best we can. So really being flexible in a productive way and being honest. So I do want to show you the next screen has some resource questions. These are adapted from a social worker that works in our area that specializes in trauma in schools. So she knows what she's doing, and I these worked. I got some really great answers back on these. So I'm not going to read them all, but you can, if you want to go back into the PDF later and just steal some of those questions, adapt them for your situation, feel free. Okay, so I do want to hit a few minutes. I should check my time. Okay, I gotta fly here. Learning, we do, I think to move from surviving to thriving, it's really important to do some learning. And educators have just blown me away with the amount of things they have learned so fast. But I did want to just include a couple resources. The Alfred Music blog has a ton of different topics. The Smart Music webinars, there was one a few weeks ago about virtual teaching, all kinds of different topics. The NAFME website has a ton of resources. Ask a COVID resources, the teaching webinar where they showed somebody virtual teaching that I mentioned is LinkedIn. ACDA has a bunch. So that's just a starting point. So right now in the chat, could you throw in any other, I'm going to talk about social media in a second, but any other like blogs or websites that you found really helpful, could you throw that in the chat right now? Because I think we all could use more resources, and if people might spur on some other ideas. So if you can just throw that in the chat, that would be fantastic. My one caution is when we're doing research and trying to come up with ideas and all that, we need to be really careful about our perspective. It's easy in our mindset, it's really easy to read something and say, oh, that would never work in my district, right? I've heard teachers do that all the time. Instead, we could say, hey, how can I adapt that to make that work in my district? Okay, so they have a lot more resources than I do. How can I make that work for my students? Or how can I take one little nugget out of that to benefit my students? Okay, we don't have money to buy this or that or whatever, but what could I do with that? The teachers that I see that are looking for things to work find things that work. Okay, so just keeping that perspective as you're doing research. I have found absolutely the most helpful thing is social media, and I'm not a big Twitter or Instagram person, so I put a few things on there. Again, John Gordon is a fantastic person. Michelle Rose has been teaching virtual band for, I think it's 4 years. So she's done this before the pandemic, has some great videos of how to do it and some great ideas. Facebook is where I found the most because of the group structure on there, and so I linked each one of those groups on there. Again, there's a lot of other ones, so if you could throw in the chat right now any other groups you're a part of that have been really helpful, just pop those in the chat for everybody, because I think everybody would benefit from that. In addition, the national organizations, NAFME, ACDA, all the national organizations have been really great about getting out resources as well. Okay. Sorry, let me get to the next screen here. Okay, social media tips. I do want to hit real fast. Make sure you set aside limited times to research. Then pick a few things to try and go for it. So if we spend hours trying to come up with ideas, we're never going to implement them, and it's very overwhelming very fast. So just go right for what you're doing. Search the groups. The Facebook groups are great. They have the little search thing, which I know more and more people are figuring out. But usually there's a little blank thing that says search here. Post just a few keywords from what you're looking for, and you'll see a bunch of posts related to that. And it's a great way to quickly find some things that will be helpful to you. None of us have a lot of time to be doing research right now, right? We're busy surviving. So you can't, if you're going to be thriving, you can't take hours and hours and hours. Because if you're killing yourself and staying up till midnight every week, it's not going to be helpful for you, and it's not going to be helpful for your students. So maybe you could do that for a while, but we can't sustain that pace. So please, please remember that. Limit your research. Search for exactly what you need, and really focus on getting good ideas and inspiration rather than comparing and different situations and all of that. And then, of course, take advice with a grain of salt. There's lots of perspectives out there, and it's just important to remember that as you're surfing all the groups and everything. So, all right, next, something that can really help us change our perspective and our mindset and move out of the survival mode, like, am I going to make it, to really thriving, is being an agent of change. And Robert Colbert talks about this. I studied with him at University of Michigan, always talked about this in terms of advocacy and growing our program and in our community, is being an agent of change. How can you productively bring about change for your program, for your community, for your students, and in your district? One thing is positive leadership, right? Be proactive, be flexible. This summer, we had to jump right on. We didn't know what was coming down. In Michigan, a lot of the things were changing very quickly right before we opened. And so administrators didn't have time to even process it, let alone come up with solutions. And so we just, we asked for some meetings. Hey, can we chat about this? Can we chat about this? I firmly believe it is our job to provide information and solutions for our admin teams. They can't possibly know the ramification of every decision when there's not a pandemic, let alone when there's a pandemic. So they need our help in a productive and proactive way instead of reacting after the fact. And every teaching situation is going to be different with that. It really takes learning our administrators, and some administrators are more open to that. And I think the best way is really casual conversations. But also everything we do kind of sets up the relationship. Do we always, if an administrator comes to us, do we always react? Do we always react? Well, they're not going to come to us for ideas if we're always busy reacting. Instead of, can we process and come up with solutions or ideas? I try to never go to an administrator without at least a couple of solutions. So if I have an issue, then, hey, could we try this or this or this, or which one would you be most comfortable with? And hopefully they're all solutions that I'm happy with, right? Or I really think this would be the best solution, but here's a couple other ways we can make this work. So changing that mindset and to really being an agent of change in our school, in our classroom, in our district. Is really important. So John Gordon, I talked about him a little bit earlier, has a fantastic he's got books and everything, but there's an article that really sums up this really well. It's called The 9 Practices That Make Great Leaders. And if you don't do anything else from this webinar, I'd like you to read that. It's fantastic. Keeps your focus maybe during this time, and quite frankly, as we all move throughout this year, we're probably going to be changing and adapting more than once, right? We might go remote, we might go hybrid, so this might really help your perspective as you're working on moving to thriving. There's another great TED Talk by Benjamin Zander on there as well, and thinking what you can do as a department, or if you don't have a department, if it's just you, what could you do? Our department made a video. We had people hesitant about coming back, and we made a video with all of us on it, just offering encouragement, telling them we are excited to start school amidst everything they're hearing about people being nervous and all that. We wanted them to know, students to know that we were excited to see them, even if we're nervous to go back to school. So those types of things. I know a bunch of teachers made TikTok videos and just all kinds of things. We can be an agent of change right in our own classroom. So our students are going through a pandemic, we're going through a pandemic. How can we change the culture so that students are having a successful experience on Zoom, at least during our class or in person or whatever it is? One thing I forgot to mention is that when you're working with your admin teams, timing is everything. I want you to think about if you're doing a concert and you have 5 students come up to you with questions, or my instrument broke, this happened, da da da. It's very stressful, right? So there have been times I've walked into the office and with something I need to talk to one of the administrators about, and I just keep right on walking. Hey, how you doing? See, it's not the right time. They're in the middle of something and it's not the right time. So it's really important for us, again, to put ourselves in their shoes and remember that if we're going to be an agent of change, there's a lot of pieces to that puzzle and what that can look like given your situation. Choosing to focus on the positive is one way we can be a positive leader. So this is where I am. This is my teaching situation this year. It doesn't mean it's where I have to stay, but it's where I am right now. And then maybe my job today is to get through today. So thriving is going to, I almost changed the title of this because surviving to thriving makes it sound very easy, right? Just a linear, if I just do these 3 things, I'll be thriving. Well, that's not how life works. And that's definitely not how pandemic works. But maybe my job today, this month, given everything that's going on, is just to get through today and make it. Put one foot in front of the other, one day at a time. Maybe I'm doing some things are up and rolling and I'm ready to really do some more stuff and try some new things. Okay? Trying to have fun will help us stay positive. So things are stressful, but the more, if we can relax and have a little fun with our students, we will have fun with what we're doing. And really focusing on embracing the best parts, even in this new format. So for you as a teacher, and this is going to be different for all of us, what are the best parts of teaching for you? Is it connecting with the kids? Is it the concerts? Is it the shared musical experience in the classroom? It's going to be different, but what is that? And how could you somehow pull some pieces out of that into your current situation? Maybe you have them send in some Flipgrid videos of them answering a question, or some things that you can't really do in a group Zoom, or whatever it is. But our attitude and having fun will set the tone for our students. And then just remembering, as we're trying to stay positive, that this is not forever, right? It's a season of life, and that's okay. We had a funny moment. Our room, we got it all set up with a couple of my colleagues and all socially distant at the high school, and we're like, okay, we did it. I think we have enough chairs. I think they're spread out enough. I think we're ready. And my colleague is like, whoa. We were all kind of like, wow, this is different. And he's like, they're so spread out, and we lose that camaraderie we have in an ensemble, right? And I was looking around, and the first thought that came to mind was like, well, our groups by the end of this year are going to play so well together, because if they can play well together spread far apart, they can sure play well together facing each other as a set up like a normal ensemble. So just choosing to look on the positive and what good is going to come out of it helps us. It doesn't mean we're sitting with a fake smile saying everything is peachy keen, but we can find good things to focus on and help us move forward. All right, continuing, I'm almost done here, and then we're going to do some questions and answers. Continuing to prepare for change, I'm going to let you kind of look at this slide, just reminding ourselves that just because I have it all together right now, which none of us do, but if I think I do, it's probably going to change formats, and that's okay. But preparing ourselves helps us react to those situations. A lot of us feel like this right now, right? We will feel this way throughout the year, and that's okay. We're going to manage the time and do what we can, and that's all we can do. So we can't possibly do everything we've done in the past or everything we want to do, but we can do some and feel good about what we're doing. Okay, I love this quote. Joy does not simply happen to us. We have to choose joy and keep choosing it every day. If there's a mindset that will move us from survival to thrival each morning, it's remembering that. Okay. I'm going to choose joy today. Joy doesn't always equal happiness. It doesn't always equal that type of thinking, but we can find joy in our situation no matter what. All right, so thriving in the long haul. I can't overstate this enough. We just have to go back to the basics, right? Don't underestimate the power of good sleep, nutrition, exercise, healthy work hours, and investing in family and friend relationships. Um, I was falling apart last week, and I realized I had been up super late every night because so I need to get good sleep. It's gonna ebb and flow. It's not like we're gonna say, okay, the rest of this year I'm gonna do exercise. I'm gonna get all of my exercise and good sleep, and this year's probably not the year that's gonna happen, right? But we can make enough good choices that we're able to function at a good level. Some pro tips there. You can check those out. But remember that you can't be replaced at home. So keep just keeping perspective of your priorities and remembering it's not forever. I hear a lot of people, especially with the focus on life work balance these days, and that is important. But it's also remembering that if you're putting pressure on yourself to have that balance, it might ebb and flow, and that's okay. I'm going to show you this picture of my gang. These are my 4 kiddos. In August, we have 2 educators in my household, and so August was like non-existent. We told them at the beginning of August, this month's going to be pretty crazy, and we're going to be working a lot. So you guys are going to have some time. You're all together. You're going to be able to watch some extra movies. We're going to get some meals that are easy for you guys to make, and knowing that life-work balance is going to ebb and flow. If we did that for a whole year, obviously that's not healthy for our family. But we could do that for a month while we were getting back to school and in total survival mode. So if you are, well, I think actually we're gonna fly through this. I'm gonna move forward just a little bit. Yeah. So Pep Talk for Teachers. This is the blog post I most recently wrote in August, and if you just need a little more encouragement, click on that, and it will really, hopefully, be helpful to read that. And there's also a list of the things that I talked about. Stop, breathe, sit limited time to research, talk to others for encouragement, all of those things. So if that helps you to have a list, if you're a list person, go for it. The pessimist. Oops, sorry. I've got to move something here. The pessimist complains about the wind. The optimist expects it to change. The realist adjusts the sails. So moving from surviving to thriving, and as we move many times through that, we really need to think, okay, how do I just need to adjust the sails? What am I doing right now, and how can I do that well, instead of thinking about everything else that will be happening? Whoops. Okay. I love this quote. I'm sure most of you have heard it. I learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And keeping that in perspective with our students and also our staff is really important, and for ourselves. So no matter what the successes and failures you encounter this year, I hope that you know that you are playing a crucial role in students' lives, and that you can remember that. And if we keep that perspective, that will help us a ton. My bio's in there if you need to get a hold of me or anything like that. The Alfred author page at the bottom has some of my resources. I just thank you guys so much for coming. Like I said, you get huge kudos just for coming to a webinar on a Friday afternoon. So I hope you have a fantastic weekend, and I wish you just all the success this year. And just remember, what you do makes a difference every day. So hang in there. We'll all survive and thrive this year together.